Hey guys, Kingpin here. Welcome to the next episode of Franchise Mode. Normally I'd say welcome to the name of the zoo, but we actually don't have a name for this zoo. I got a lot of good suggestions in the last video though. I'm sure I'll make a decision very soon. But what we do have is Penguin Cove, one of my favorite starting exhibits I've ever made. If you walk past the giant viewing tank, you'll find an underwater path. It took a really long time to make this, and I wouldn't recommend it for beginners, but it looks really nice if you can pull it off. Just be patient, I know you can do it. If you go up the stairs, you'll see the area where our penguins spend most of their time, over by the shallow water in their pool. They can also go outside from here. There's a ramp that lets them go to their outside viewing area. Penguin Cove is great and all, but we're actually really low on money right now. That $50,000 is not ours, it's a loan from the bank, and we're gonna have to pay that off. So, we're gonna have to use that money to get all of our amenities for the zoo. We're gonna need a research center too, so our penguins can start getting better food. That way, they'll make more money because they'll appeal more to the guests. The first thing that we can do with that $50,000 we just took is pay off our other two loans we used to make Penguin Cove. That way, we're only gonna be in debt to one bank, not three. If you are curious as to why I said I don't recommend making something as big as Penguin Cove for the start of your franchise mode, this is exactly why. Typically, I'd recommend to start with a basic animal, like a lemur, flamingo. Penguins are also good, you just shouldn't make them a giant exhibit like this unless you're confident you can get out of debt. I know how, and I'll be able to share some really valuable tips with you, but Penguin Cove cost about $30,000. Now that doesn't seem like that much, but keep in mind that's without the penguins, that's without the keeper salaries, that's without the food, and that also doesn't include research centers, quarantines, and vet surgeries that you need. Matter of fact, we still don't have a research center, and we need to get one of those down so we can start researching for our penguins really quickly. Another thing that I didn't really like in the Center of Primate Conservation was that all of our staff rooms were in the exact same spot. In this zoo, I want to spread them out a little bit and have a bunch of different designated staff zones that the different work zones can work in. I think that would be more realistic instead of just having everything crammed into the back of the zoo. For now, we'll throw the research center there. We need a small animal that can take up a very little amount of space, and I already have the exhibit area mapped out. I'm not really sure what we're going to do with this middle thing quite yet, but for now we're going to be working here. This exhibit's going to take up this little sandy area and this little grassy area. This is honestly exactly how I would recommend starting your franchise in the first place. Take an animal that's pretty small, it can be a carnivore or herbivore, but it shouldn't be one that has a really high requirement to take care of. It doesn't need a lot of space, it doesn't require a lot of food to keep happy, it doesn't really need a whole lot of enrichment. Just pick an animal that's small and really easy to take care of. And I think the Arctic fox is going to do great. Plus it also gels really well with the penguin. Since they both really like cold climates, the scenery is going to be similar. Try to do that when you start too. Have animals that like the same things in the same area. Another really good tip I have is if you're just starting off and you're tight on money like we are in this franchise, try to use animals that are cheap, but you can also get with conservation credits. If you have a surplus of conservation credits, this effectively makes the animal free. I'm not really sure where we got it. It might have been an award from a challenge that we did earlier, but we already had one Arctic fox. It was a male, so all we had to do was spend a couple hundred conservation credits on a female, and eventually, hopefully these two can breed if we make them happy enough. But that's always the challenge, isn't it? Don't forget that as soon as the animal first comes into the exhibit, always check the traversable area first. Even if you have a 40-foot wall, you might have had a blind spot, and you really don't want a dangerous animal causing havoc in a brand new zoo. The absolute last thing you want are protesters in a brand new franchise. The fastest way to bring protesters to your zoo is to not have your animals with the proper enrichment items. So the very first thing you need to do when you place a brand new animal into your zoo is give it the bare minimum of enrichment items it needs at least. Try to give it at least all of its stats required for enrichment, whether that's food and entertainment, but having a couple of things each way is going to get you off to a good start. You should be able to afford at least one thing, although for some reason cardboard boxes for enrichment cost $100, so that might be a little bit steep. If your exhibit's not big enough to have a body of water, nor do you have a water purifier around, or water treatment I think it's called in this game, this right here is the most helpful enrichment item you can possibly have. This water faucet allows the animals to get a drink all on their own. They don't need to have a natural body of water, and it doesn't really require power either. It's pretty free to have too. I recommend it in almost every exhibit. It takes a lot of burden off of the keepers that have to keep refilling water otherwise. Alright, this episode just took a drastic turn. This is not good at all. Both of our Arctic foxes are extremely stressed, which brought their welfare all the way down to 0. It's not because they're lacking hard shelter, it's not because they're lacking terrain. What could this possibly be? Stress in Planet Zoo is one of the trickiest things to account for. Stress can be caused if the animals don't have enough place to hide, if they don't really like their exhibit layout, if there's too many plants or too little plants, or if they don't really like their food. Since so many things can cause stress in Planet Zoo, we're going to have to diagnose it ourselves, so I'll teach you guys how to do that now. The first thing that you should do is what's causing our stress. Look around the exhibit. Are there too many areas the guests can view the animal from? In this case, we have a chain link fence that the guests can see through, covering about 75% of the exhibit. While yes, they can hide inside of their shelter, that's not enough. I would say 9 times out of 10 in this game when your animals are stressed out, this is the reason why. Just look at this exhibit. I can't believe I made this mistake. These Arctic foxes are really under stress and the protesters are just rallying up the crowd even more. This is why protesters in this game are a problem, because they're very hard to get rid of if the animal's stressed, and them being there makes the animal more stressed. Luckily, there's an easy way to fix this, and it's to completely block them from sight of the animal. We'll easily just replace the chain link fence with a wood fence for now, even though it is the ugly pre-game one. That's fine, because right now the animal's stress levels really need to go down before we can continue, because our zoo just started not losing money, and these protesters are going to drive them away. You do not want protesters in your new zoo, I promise. We also added far too many plants for these little guys. We should have done a little bit more research before. The number one trait you need to have when playing any sandbox game, but especially franchise mode in Planet Zoo, is to be able to adapt. What I mean to be able to adapt is that the toughest part about this game is taking what you just worked so hard on, in some case it might have taken you days, and having to hit the Y or square button to delete it all. Sometimes the exhibit's not going to go exactly how you planned. Sometimes the protesters are going to come in and throw a curveball, even if you think the exhibit's good. It's not always exactly how you plan it, so being able to change the plan is a really key attribute in being good at sandbox games, but especially in this one, because the animals can sometimes be a little bit overly complicated to take care of. These Arctic foxes said nothing about stress in the Zoopedia, but they really seem to be fussy with the amount of foliage they like. I would have figured they would have liked more. Just because you were wrong, or in this case, just because I was wrong in this scenario, doesn't mean you have to completely redo the exhibit, however. Instead, I'm just going to take this one from being a little forest clearing, to now it's going to be a little rocky area that's more akin to the Arctic where these foxes call home. If you plan ahead, and still mess up, that's perfectly okay. Just change the plans and adapt. It's not very hard once you figure out how to do it, you just have to stay calm. Where it gets impossible to fix is if you don't adapt to an exhibit and just let it run haywire and make that exact same mistake numerous times in the same zoo. Then you're going to have a ton of animals that are not happy and your franchise is going to come crumbling down. Think about the campaign scenarios in this game if you've played those. How hard is it when you have to manage 100 different animals at once that are all unhappy? That's why it's so important in franchise mode to make your animals happy from the start, so the exhibits end up becoming self-sustaining by themselves. Keeping on top of things is the number one way to make franchise mode so much easier, and luckily, I have a few ways that you can mitigate the difficulty of franchise mode. The first and probably most important way is to stay organized. The easiest way by far to stay organized is to use work zones in this game. Staff work zones are a component you can access from the main menu where it says staff, and this pretty much just tells the staff where they can and can't go. For example, if we have a staff work zone, say of our Arctic fox area and our penguin habitat, and then we make an African elephant one, the staff aren't going to go from work zone to work zone. The staff is going to, stay in the African elephant pavilion, and the staff that's assigned to the Arctic fox and the king penguin exhibit is going to stay there. This way, the zoo can run much more efficiently. Another easy way to make work zones and be organized is to label your exhibits. You don't have to necessarily label it something boring, like penguin habitat, like I do, but it's a lot easier, because by default, it's just going to say Habitat 1, Habitat 2, Habitat 3. By the time you have a huge zoo, you're not going to remember what Habitat 34 is, as opposed to Habitat 27. You're going to forget often, so it's really easy to label the exhibits either something basic, like blank animal habitat, or just name it something creative, like we called our penguin exhibit Penguin Cove. We've talked a lot in this channel about pre-planning your exhibits, but don't forget to pre-plan your animal too. This would avoid the mistake I just made. For example, I've never ever made a habitat for Arctic foxes before in this game, but now, if I would have watched a video beforehand, just like this video, I would know that they're really prone to stress, so I wouldn't have used a massive chain link fence. I can also tell you guys that the Galapagos giant tortoise does the exact same thing because I have the experience, but if you don't have experience on an animal, just look up a video on it, by any YouTuber. My goodness, you guys are loud. For such little guys, you guys can seriously pack a punch. Just in time for our inspector, too. Hopefully this time the exhibit checks all the boxes off. We don't have any education yet, which is going to be a slight issue, but the exhibit has them at 100% wellness. We really lowered the area where the guests can see them, but hopefully they don't pile up. Well, unfortunately, we learned that Arctic foxes are really easy to get stressed out, but we should probably learn a little bit more about them before we finish their exhibit. The most fascinating thing about Arctic foxes to me is that they're well adapted to survive in extremely cold environments. This is because their fur actually changes colors depending on the season. In the winter months, when there's snow absolutely everywhere in the Arctic and Alaska where they live, their fur will be a dense white color to help them blend in and hide from predators. However, when the snow starts to melt, their fur actually changes to a more grayish-brown color to help them hide among the rocks and stuff that's revealed when the white snow is gone. This not only helps them hide from predators, but it also helps them hunt. Arctic foxes are carnivorous creatures, eating lemmings, birds, fish, owls, pretty much whatever they can get their claws on. The Arctic is an extremely harsh environment to live in because you'll find that pretty much all the land animals there are predators of some sorts. Because think about it, what herbivores could possibly live in the Arctic because there's not enough food there to house them? That's why the only animals that are herbivorous that live in the Arctic are things like seals, walruses, and narwhals, which get their food from the ocean floor, because there's no grass to graze on for herbivores on the surface. Arctic foxes hunt by leaping into the snow, snout first. This gets them deep enough into the snow to typically flush out whatever prey they're hunting, but they also use their digging ability to create dens, which they dig themselves, or just take over from other animals like ground squirrels. They have short legs and a compact body, making them well suited for navigating these tight corridors. Arctic foxes typically are solitary animals, but they may form small family units consisting of a mating pair and their offspring. I say mating pair because they have a really unique reproductive strategy. Arctic foxes, among pretty much all fox species, are generally monogamous animals, which means they mate for life, and both parents participate in raising the young. They usually have a litter of up to 14 pups born in the spring. In some cases, when food is scarce, Arctic foxes may migrate long distances to find better hunting grounds. This ability to cover vast distance makes them highly adaptable to changing environment conditions. To survive in their harsh habitat, Arctic foxes have developed some interesting tactics and behaviors. For example, they may cache excess food to eat later when prey is scarce, just as bears do. They also have a keen sense of hearing, which helps them locate prey underneath the snow, sensing sound vibrations. As you can see, Arctic fox are extremely successful and adaptive. This is why they have such a big range on Earth. They're also not listed as endangered, nor even vulnerable. They're a perfectly fine species and they're thriving on their own right. As their name suggests, Arctic foxes are found in the Arctic regions on the planet, including the Arctic tundra itself, the alpine tundra, and the coastal regions around the Arctic Ocean. They have a circumpolar distribution, meaning they're found in the Arctic regions north of America, Greenland, Europe, and Asia. In the wild, Arctic foxes typically can live from around 3 to 6 years, although they live much longer in captivity. Their lifespan is influenced by factors such as predation, food availability, and environmental conditions. Obviously, they don't have to worry about that in a zoo. Arctic foxes have a specialized circulatory system at their feet that helps them prevent from losing body heat due to the snow and ice that they walk on. This adaptation allows them to maintain a very comfortable body temperature. Despite their small stature and size, Arctic foxes are tenacious hunters. They've been in the wild observed stalking larger prey such as caribou, and are known for their agility and cunning nature. In addition to their terrestrial habitats, Arctic foxes are also skilled swimmers. They can paddle through icy waters with ease using their thick fur as an insulation against the cold, and their tail as a motor of sorts. Arctic foxes also communicate with a variety of vocalizations, including barks, yips, and growls. As you've probably heard in the game so far, they're extremely loud animals. They don't make very good pets, although they are legal in most states in America. Overall, Arctic foxes play a crucial role in the ecosystems they inhabit. As both predators and scavengers, they help regulate populations of small mammals and birds, contributing heavily to the overall balance of their fragile Arctic habitat. Before this part of the time-lapse, I didn't really get to explain what I was doing. We already completely finished up the Arctic fox's area, but for now we're trying to make a staff area that looks nice. Staff have a hidden stat in this game. Well, it's not so much hidden, it's just not really explained very well, but it's their scenery rating. If staff buildings have a good scenery out the windows of the back of them, or in some cases on the side, the staff will actually take shorter breaks and work a lot better if they have a good scenery rating. To get a good scenery rating, you just have to make them an area where you personally would enjoy working. Add a lot of plants, add some exhibits that they might be able to see from there. Maybe add a fountain, make them within walking distance of a restroom, or maybe some food areas where they can take their breaks. Just try to make your staff as happy as you make the animals. It's really not very hard, and it makes your zoo look a lot better because it helps fill in those little gaps. Look how bad it looks right now with just this grass. All it takes is a few plants, some flowers, and some grass to make a barren grass field into a really nice area for staff to come and rest. The comment sections in this series has been incredible so far. The last video actually got over 50 comments, which is by far a channel record. I'm really appreciating the engagement out of you guys, and I want to say thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already. We're starting to make a wonderful community here, and I'd be happy to have you if you're not already in it. That being said, feel free to leave more comments below on what you want to see out of the zoo. We got a lot of comments saying pygmy hippos should be added eventually. That's definitely going to happen soon. Let me know what animals you want, let me know what themes you want to see. Heck, let me know what you want the zoo to be named. This is a community-driven channel after all. I really like it when you guys engage. It helps me with the creative freedoms a lot. Sometimes I get writer's block. Having comment sections that are active really help with that. That's going to be it for me for now for this time-lapse. Feel free to skip to the end of the video. Time's going to be on screen. But if you want to watch the end of the time-lapse, I'll ask some trivia questions along the way to see if you were paying attention in the education segment. And heck, maybe some throwback questions from previous episodes too. Let me know how many you get right. Crisis finally averted. All of the protesters are gone, we have a stable economy, and we're actually not losing money for the first time since we started the zoo. In case you weren't really paying attention during the time-lapse, I'll show you exactly what we made. I really like how it turned out. Pretty much what we did was come over here and detail up our vet surgery area. We also made this really nice looking bathroom. It's connected to a food and drink shop as well. All of it's really detailed up with some nice scenery. We added a nice concrete trim as well, along with these staff-only signs. Overall, I think the guests will really like it. But, on the negative side, I think there's a storm coming. Matter of fact, it's already here, but it's only going to get worse, so I think you guys should get ready to head out. It's been a fun episode. Hopefully we taught you guys a lot about what the mistakes not to make at the beginning of a franchise, but you live and learn. I guess we'll see you in the next episode coming real soon. Kingpin out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a good one. See you then.